I have always been skeptical about the paranormal. I mean, I am a man of logic, of science. I don't buy those ghost and specter stories they tell to scare children. For me, everything has an explanation, and that's what gave me peace of mind. Or at least, it did until I moved into that house. The decision to move to the village was driven by the stress of city life. I needed a change of air, a quiet place where I could find peace and focus on my work. When I found the house, I couldn't believe my luck. It was an old colonial-style building with rustic charm and plenty of space. And best of all, the price was a bargain. I remember the first time I saw it. It was located on the outskirts of town, surrounded by a dense grove of trees that isolated it from the rest of the world. The facade showed signs of neglect, with peeling paint and dust-covered windows, but as soon as I walked through the door, I felt that this place had potential. I ignored the cold feeling that ran through me as I entered. It was an old house, after all. Nothing that couldn't be fixed with a little human warmth. The first few days passed without incident. I spent my time cleaning, dusting furniture and familiarizing myself with the surroundings. The villagers were friendly, if a bit reserved. They seemed strangely interested in my new home, asking me questions about how I felt there and if I had noticed anything unusual. I laughed at their insinuations and chalked them up to simple rural superstitions. The first night everything changed. It was unusually cold for that time of year. I was in my room, trying to sleep, but something kept me restless. A faint murmur, barely a whisper, filtered through the walls. I sat up in bed, sharpening my hearing, trying to locate the source of the sound, but it faded away as soon as I focused on it. I thought it was just the wind, or maybe some animal outside. I closed my eyes, determined to ignore it. But the whisper came again, this time clearer, more insistent. It wasn't the wind. I got up, still half asleep, and went to the window. I opened the curtains and looked outside, expecting to see some stray cat prowling around, but found only darkness, a dense blackness that seemed to envelop the house. However, that was not what disturbed me. It was what I saw in the reflection of the window. At first, I thought it was my own image. After all, I was alone in the room. But something about the reflection didn't add up. I moved closer, frowning, trying to figure out what I was seeing. My reflection was there, yes, but there was something else. Something in the eyes, in the expression, that wasn't quite mine. It was as if the image in the glass was returning a look I didn't recognize. My heart began to beat faster, and I instinctively turned away, but I couldn't stop looking. Something in the reflection seemed to move slightly, independently of my own movements. Was I hallucinating? Was it fatigue? I moved closer once more, looking for some mistake, some trick of light. And then, I saw it. The reflection, my reflection, smiled. But it wasn't my smile. It was a crooked, malicious grimace I had never seen on my face before. Panic flooded me and I took a step back, feeling an inexplicable chill grip the room. The smile widened, stretching the features of the image into the grotesque. I couldn't hold back a scream, but in the next instant, the reflection returned to normal. There was only me, panting, pale-faced and wild-eyed. I stood there in front of the window, trying to rationalize what had just happened. My mind was racing in 1,000 directions, looking for a logical explanation, but none of them made sense. I knew what I had seen, but I also knew it couldn't be real. I told myself that it was just tiredness, that my mind was playing tricks on me. I went back to bed, my body shaking from head to toe, and I closed my eyes tightly, trying to ignore the feeling that something, or someone, was watching me from the darkness. That night, I never slept again. The following nights were a living nightmare. From that first encounter with the reflection, things only got worse. I began to notice strange details throughout the house. Objects that changed places, doors that I found open when I was sure I had closed them. And the reflection, that damn reflection, followed me everywhere. I avoided mirrors as much as I could, but it was as if that something managed to find me on any reflective surface. No matter how many windows I covered with sheets, or how many mirrors I broke and hid in the basement, it always appeared. In puddles of water after the rain, on the dull screen of my phone, even on kitchen utensils. I couldn't escape. What terrified me most was the feeling that this reflection didn't just want to torment me. I felt it had a purpose, a dark intent that I couldn't quite understand. And that smile, that distorted grin, became clearer, more sinister with each appearance. As if that thing was gaining strength, feeding on my fear. My behavior began to change. I stopped leaving the house, stopped talking to the few acquaintances I had made in town. I became paranoid, checking every corner, every shadow. The sound of whispering became constant, accompanying me at all hours, even during the day. I knew I was losing control, that my sanity was slowly fading, but there was nothing I could do to stop it. One night, after several days with hardly any sleep, I decided I couldn't go on like this. I had to confront whatever it was that was haunting me. I had done enough research to know that the house had a dark history, but the real revelation came when I found a diary hidden in the attic, covered in dust and cobwebs. The journal belonged to a man named Edward, the former owner of the house. His last entries were a record of his descent into madness. He spoke of an other self he had seen in mirrors, a presence that had haunted him for months before taking over his life completely. The last words of the journal were a warning, written in despair: "Don't trust your reflection. Don't let it in." That warning echoed in my mind as I read the worn pages over and over. Eduardo had tried to fight back, but in the end, the reflection had consumed him. I realized that I was following his same path, and if I didn't do something soon, I would have the same fate. That night, I decided to confront this entity once and for all. I dusted off the largest mirror I could find in the basement and took it to the living room. I knew it was a risk, but I was ready for anything. I sat in front of the mirror, feeling the weight of the silence in the room, and waited. The minutes passed like hours. The house was plunged into almost total darkness, broken only by the dim light of a candle I had placed next to the mirror. The air grew colder, and I felt something change in the atmosphere. An invisible presence was manifesting itself around me, and then, there it was. My reflection, or whatever that thing was, appeared in the mirror. This time, it was not motionless. It was moving on its own, sliding forward as if it wanted to get out of the glass. Its face was a mask of horror, with that twisted smile and those empty eyes that watched me with an insatiable hunger. I knew he wouldn't just leave this time. Terror came over me, but I forced myself not to look away. I felt something tugging at me, a force pulling me toward the mirror. It was as if the glass surface had become liquid, a portal to a place from which I could not return. I fought with all my might, clinging to reality, but I felt I was losing the battle. The reflection was coming closer and closer, its ghostly hand stretching toward me, piercing the glass. It was the end, I knew it. I couldn't fight it. I felt the chill run through my body as his hand touched mine, and a feeling of utter emptiness came over me. Suddenly, the candle went out, and darkness enveloped me completely. An instant later, I felt myself falling, as if I had been absorbed by the mirror. I woke up on the floor, my head aching and my mind foggy. I got up slowly, still dazed, and walked over to the mirror. What I saw froze me in my tracks. The mirror reflected the room, but not me. Instead, there was only a dark void, an abyss staring back at me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out of my mouth. I moved closer, trying to understand what I was seeing, but then I understood. I was not in my world. I was not in my reality. I was trapped on the other side, in the reflection, while that thing, that other me, was living my life. I could see everything, from the other dimension, but no one could see me. I could hear the whispers that were now clear as day, mocking me, enjoying my despair. That thing had taken my place, had crossed over into the real world, and I was condemned to watch, helpless, from the shadows. Since then, I have been trapped here, with no way to escape. I don't know how long it's been, but every day is an eternity. I can do nothing but watch as my life falls apart, as this thing ruins everything I am. No one has noticed the difference. No one has noticed that it's not me, that the real me is trapped in this cursed place, screaming for no one to hear me. Now, all I can do is warn them. If you ever notice anything strange in your reflection, if you ever feel like you're not alone when you look in a mirror, run. Because if that thing crosses over, there's no turning back. And believe me, I'm telling you from experience, losing your reflection is just the beginning of the real terror.